I kind of like the down the middle approach. You know, there's people that have this perspective. There's people that have that perspective. Let me kind of find mine in the middle. Does that make sense? A little down the middle.
You mean
approach.
think for yourself?
Yeah.
God forbid we did that.
Yeah. Just think about it. But other than that, I got too much other stuff to do, you know?
And that's why I think we have to die. I'll make a left turn for you. But you're a guy that wants to face those fears. That's why you're going to be on stage one day.
It's coming, man.
You have to. Well, before I started, I was writing for 2 years.
Really?
Before I ever did it. It was on I have a list of things I have to do before I hopefully die. Or hopefully do before I die.
You have an actual list?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Hey, what's going on today, guys? Steve from the SaltyFresh Perspective podcast, checking in here with another episode. Coming back on the show today is comedian, author, and former mental health practitioner, Adam Lowery. Adam and I discuss comedy, his book, The Cognitive Rampage, his discovery of athletes' depression, and simply some of our philosophies on life. Please give it up for Adam Lowery. All right, you ready to roll?
Yeah, baby.
Here we go.
Round
two.
two, baby.
Round
I cheers
two.
you, but you're not a drinker.
Man, I know. You know, the no drinking thing gets to me sometimes, but
yeah, it's all right. It happens.
Here we are, man. Round two. How you been?
I'm good, man.
Yeah?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm a non-smoker now, so I don't smoke weed anymore. So
How long's that been?
3 years. 3
on
years.
420. No smoking anything on 420.
No smoking on 420, man. Yeah. I don't know. I think my body just quit, man. What I like to tell myself, it's arrogant as shit. I go, because now I smoke and I just get nuts, man. I get crazy paranoid. It hits me too much. And I'm like, I know too much already. So now that's what I tell myself. And now I smoke and I'm all weird. I'm all like, I can't do this, man. I can't do this, man.
It just gets to you, huh?
It does. No, I mean, I smoked my whole life, man. I smoked forever. I was back in those drug dealing days, man. It was like, if we had a 15-minute drive down the street, it was like, roll up, man. Roll up. Roll up. 6 months a day type, smoking a long time. And then, I mean, obviously I wasn't smoking that much as I got older, but like 3 or 4 years ago, man, I couldn't do it. I'd hit a little bit and I'd just freak out. And
Maybe
I'm like,
you hit that ceiling. Maybe there's a THC ceiling that you hit, and then you kind of just...
I think so. Because I know, because I know you're a recent smoker.
It's been about 10 years.
Oh, so you're in. You're in.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right, so that throws that theory out the window.
I'm a recent, and this was something I learned from you last time, a term, podcast remorse, right?
Yeah, okay.
This I learned from you, but I came into our last podcast and I told you about my first time doing mushrooms. Yeah, it was recent. It was like the week before I talked to you, so we kind of went through it. But the remorse came from my mom watches all of these things. So she's known about the weed thing, but she hasn't known about the mushroom. So I had to explain that one to her before she saw it.
Good luck with that. How'd she take it?
She took it all right. She's like, don't do it again. But I had my reasons, man. I remember I told you, it kind of helped me, realize that love is a real thing and, things along that nature. So when I explained it to her, she was like, oh, okay, I get it. Just don't do it again.
All right. I mean, she's got to be from the 60s and 70s. She gets it.
Man, she gets it.
She dropped a little acid in her day.
No, man. There's levels of people that are, smoke weed for 10 years, smoke 6 blunts a day. And then there's the other side that only sees the negative. Sure. Right. Maybe they grew up in an environment where individuals wasted time or wasted resources. So she's kind of one of those that's kind of caught up in.
Well, it's also a societal thing, right? If you come up in that era too of, the just say no era or drugs are bad, this is your brain on drugs, right? Yeah. And what gets advertised to us, right, is that 15% that really struggle with drugs of any kind. I don't even like the word drugs, but that struggle with, I guess, overusage. I don't want to say addiction, right? Yeah. But that's what gets brought to us is that 15%, when it's really a majority that use that are perfectly functioning, whether that's heroin or anything else.
Yeah, and that's there's some battles you don't win, I suppose.
Not with mama.
Not with mama.
No,
but she just wants the best, and like you said, it's
sometimes you say yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
That's it. Yes, ma'am.
Just don't listen to this next one. Yeah.
No, So you gonna tell about the heroin you tried?
That's it. That's what's coming next. No. Carl Hart, man, he's got me thinking about heroin a little bit different, but I would not do it.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. I don't. I've never done heroin though. No. I've done every other drug. I haven't done heroin. I had a meth experience once.
Really?
Yeah. Let's see. Do I leave out what I was doing when it happened? Oh, yeah, I probably should.
Okay.
I probably should. It was a wonderful sexual experience that was happening at the moment. A wonderful one.
On that.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Let's just say it was a wonderful experiment. I wasn't alone, and neither was she. Anyway, somebody handed me that. And I knew the people I was with. I knew what they had because, I mean, as Carl said, I mean, meth can be one of the cleanest drugs if it's made properly. So I knew that. So anyway, I hit this thing. And man, let me tell you, for 5 minutes, it was the best high of my life ever. I have never experienced anything like that in my life. It was, wow. I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? Then about 5 minutes later, it came back my way. I'm like, well, yeah, why not? Hit it again. I didn't even get halfway to where the first one was. And I went, I get it. There's no getting, that's why they call it chasing the dragon. I'm like, you're not going to get back there again. Yeah. And I never did it again after that.
Already after like 5 minutes in, second time it's coming around, you're already looking for what you had the first go? And
it didn't even get halfway there. The feeling didn't even feel halfway there. I mean, that first one, I was like, good God almighty. I mean, that was insane. It was amazing. Not where you're like out of sorts, right? Where you can't control yourself or, I mean, you're very much in sorts, but the euphoric was amazing.
So that's what it is. It's just ultimate euphoric feeling that you're just chasing.
You feel like a god, man.
Really?
Like you really do.
Like nothing could happen to you, just kind of.
And you feel every sense. Like you feel everything.
See, weed still does that for me though, man. I don't know if, 10 years seems like a long time.
I've been really high and never in my life. I mean, I've been on ecstasy. I've done them all. And that never to that level in my life ever. But when I realized after the second one, I'm like, not even halfway. I went, I know where this goes.
Got it.
I know where this goes.
You've talked to so many people before that kind of, was this prior or after your kind of?
No, I was way younger.
Okay, this was way before. All right, so you hadn't got to the stage of communication about all that stuff yet. So
I'm dying.
All this meth talk's getting to you.
You can't breathe Miller Lite. That's what that means.
Well, when you start a conversation straight to meth, right.
Oh man, never fails. There you go, Adam. There you go, man. Right into it. Mom, sorry if you're listening to it. I don't think she knows everything about me except that probably.
Yes. But, I've really not had the desire to do anything else. The mushrooms thing took me 4 or 5 years to get to that point to where I was comfortable, like, okay, like I want to try this. Yeah. It had just always been weed. And then the alcohol thing, not drinking's been probably maybe the last 2 or 3 years where I really just tailored down. And it's health reasons. I think I told you last time, I sleep now like 9-10 hours a night for like the last year. Yeah. If I drink, it throws that out the window.
It does. It's terrible. I mean, even if you have 1 or 2, man, and try to sleep, you don't get that full sleep.
Yeah. And then I'm not a guy that likes to make bad decisions. All of my bad decisions pretty much come if there's alcohol involved at some point.
I think I'd double down on that and say, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so if I'm trying to eliminate some of those bad decisions, that's kind of why I cut
But some of the most fun experiences of my life have come also.
Yeah, and there's a balance, right? A lot of fun that comes out of it, but sometimes...
Talk about podcast remorse. Next morning remorse is pretty rough.
Next morning
Oh, God. You wake up, you're like, oh, my God.
Yeah, man.
What did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do?
The toll it takes on the body, it adds up. But then there's doctors that tell you that, some red wine's good for your heart and some alcohol is good for you every now and then. But
yeah, I don't drink liquor. That I don't mess with. I don't mess with that. I stopped drinking that probably about 3-4 years ago too. I didn't. For me, it was the roll of the dice. I'm either going to be like the life of the party, or I might go to jail.
Okay.
And the hangover from that stuff hurt too much. Some of the sugars in the alcohol didn't break down well. It's just a lot, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. Yeah. So I drink my Miller Lite, and that's what I'll do. And I pace myself if I'm drinking.
Nice.
Also depends on if I'm going on stage or not.
You like to drink before stage?
I do.
Yeah.
Depends on what mood I'm in on stage. I won't go on stage if I've had more than 7.
7's your limit.
7 beers, right?
Okay.
And that's over a period of time. I may start pre-drinking for the show. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm not pounding 7 in an hour. You know what I mean?
Not out there shotgunning.
No. Shows at 8, I might start drinking at like 5. And then I build up.
Gradual.
Yeah. So if I get to 7, I'm trying to get sponsored by Miller Lite because that's all I drink on stage.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So I'll go
Nice
on
plug.
stage with one. Yeah, I'll go on stage with one. But over 7, I've been known to run the light, go too long, think I'm funny when it's not, right?
Okay.
And go. But sometimes, man, I have great nights, man, when it's there, and it's a blast to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, social lubricant, as they call it for a long time. It does help with that. For me, it did help with that in certain circumstances.
It does. I think there was a psychiatrist back in the day that I used to work with, Dr. Rybeck. Dude was just brilliant. Brilliant. I'm not a huge fan of psychiatrists. This guy was brilliant. Worked for NASA, did a bunch of stuff. But when I used to work in a clinic, and I don't drink coffee anymore either, so I don't have no stimulants and
the caffeine side of it.
Yeah, I don't touch it. And anyway, I used to then, and I'd walk by him all kind of hype, ready for the next group or presentation I'd give or something like that. And he would just look at me and go, substance-induced hypomania. And he would just point it out.
Just call it out?
He would just call it out. And I was like, yeah, but I'm still going to do this.
Spot on, but I'm moving forward.
That's it. Jeez. And so now I think the beer does that for me. So I get into this hypomania kind of substance-induced, and then I'm just on fire on stage. I'm moving around a lot. I'm talking and just real animated. And if I don't, the other guy comes out where I'm just kind of standing still and chatting a little bit and, doing comedy. Alex Yu, who's my mentor in comedy, man, my favorite comedian of all time. I love the guy, one of my best friends. He has given me some of the best advice ever in comedy. And 2 of those pieces of advice really that have always stuck with me. The first one is simple when you think about it, but I think people forget is, before you go on stage, a lot of people are nervous. I get nervous. I don't care how big the show is. Sure. I still get nervous, right? And we've done some big shows recently together, and he pulled me aside before one of the shows. He goes, Adam, have fun, man. He's like, the people are here to have fun. Go have fun. And I'm like, that's right. You just have fun. They want to have fun. Yeah. So you just go have fun. And the other piece of advice I was alluding to with this is, I had a show one time where he was on it with me, and I just had some things going on, some personal stuff in my life happened in the first couple of days. So I was just in a funky mood, and I was worried about it. He's like, Adam, don't worry about, he said, take that energy and use that on stage. Be that person. Don't feel like you have to be a person on stage when you go do that, right? Like the wild madcap if I'm drinking and I'm loud and animated, right? He's like, bring the energy you have and do that on stage and put it into what you're doing, and it'll make something different, something else. And that's when I'm like, man, because I used to think I had to choose what kind of comic I was going to be, right? And I was like, all right, and because I'm typically loud and animated and crowd work, and I'm hyper and I move around. I'm like, all right, I got to bring that same energy, right? And then a couple times, like, no, you don't have to. And then I got comfortable when I was like, all right, I wasn't drinking. I went up and did a show where I just leaned on the mic stand and talked for a while and did just as well. So I was like, oh man, it's just great advice from that guy, Alex.
Does that kind of advice help you then be more of who you actually are, in some circumstances while you're up there on stage? Because we talked about this last time, and you're the first comedian I've ever actually talked to, had a conversation with, right? But it's something that's always appealed to me. I think I would like to give it a try, but I'm scared to do it, man.
Go for it, man.
You were like, whenever you want, 5 minutes here, come on. I'm like, I got the spot. I got somebody that said I can do it, but it's just sitting down and like coming up with something to say for 5 minutes and the act of actually doing it. But
you do it on this podcast.
I do it on the podcast, man. I've talked on stages since I was young.
That's right. You gave presentations and stuff all the time.
Yeah, so it's not about talking on stage. I don't know what it is, but to be truthful, there's some fear there that I can't seem to overcome, that I can't seem to.
But you're a guy that wants to face those fears. That's why you're going to be on stage one day.
It's coming, man.
You have to. Well, before I started, I was writing for 2 years.
Really?
Before I ever did it. It was on my, I have a list of things I have to do before I hopefully die. Or hopefully do before I die.
You have an actual list?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I got a list. And doing comedy was on that list. Yeah. So I was writing for 2 years where I would write a premise down. I didn't know what I was doing. I just think I'd write a joke down or whatever. And then out here in New Smyrna Beach, I started throwing my first shows ever. I wasn't ever throwing comedy shows. I'd done a couple open mics, maybe like twice, at a place called Chantel's in Sanford. And it was all right. I was putting it together, but then I was throwing shows at Off the Hook out here and producing those. And so I was like hosting those, and I worked on a little material here and there. And then I did my first 20 minutes up there to actually do something. But I've been writing, 2 years, and all of those jokes are terrible. They were terrible. I think I used one from that time,
really?
From that era.
But it took 2 years of writing and working it out to find something that stuck, or
I
something that was
I just
good?
had 100 premises. And so I pulled from one of my premises or two and what I thought was the funniest and tried that.
That's funny, man, because that's actually kind of what I'm doing. I'm trying to take a premise or an idea, something that there might be humor into, and then kind of trying to dissect it a little bit. But sometimes I can't find it. I'm like, man, I don't think this is funny. I got
The mic's where you find it, man.
Really?
That's
actually.
I mean, I hate giving advice to any comic of anything. One, I'm in no position to give the advice, and two, everyone's different on how you find it. And for me, I'll write a premise down, and then I'll just get on a mic and riff the premise for a while to try to find the funny. And just see what I could find. Yeah. And I'm like, I know there's something funny there, and sometimes there's not. 8 times out of 10, there's not. There's not something there, but that's what the open mic's for, right? You show up and riff it for a little bit and see what you find. I did my first show in an apartment complex last Friday.
Really?
Yeah, never done an apartment complex. Huh. And the Friday before that, I did my first theater. It was a sold-out theater, 300 people, man. Cool, it was a blast. But I went to this apartment complex, and before I went on stage, I'm like, all right, I'm going to just talk about living in an apartment and just see what I can find about living in an apartment. I didn't write anything down. I just was like, all right, so a lot of apartments have changed since I lived in Section A, you know what I mean, Section A, and just kind of started with that and started finding some funny in it, about how you hear your neighbors fucking, you know what I mean, and then you're trying to fuck your girl and you got to keep up with her, right? Yeah. You can't quit now. She's still moaning. Yeah. Then you start lying to yourself like, oh, she's faking it, man. He must pay the rent, right? Then you get done fucking, you grab the headboard and you start banging it yourself, you know what I mean, just because your girl's like, what are you doing? You're like, we got to keep up,
Got to prove a point here.
And it was stuff like that, funny. And then like you hear your neighbors arguing, right? And then so you put the cup to the wall, right? And you're listening, you're like, oh, he called her fat, right? And then then you're at the elevator the next morning next to them, you know everything about their lives. And you're like, so how's the weather, right? Then you come home, you don't even watch Netflix, you just turn everything off and listen to your neighbors for a while, right? So I just riffing, right? So just riffing on everything, and Alex is the one, he is so good at that, and that you could throw this dude a topic and he just riff on it for a while and try to find the outlandish funny of it. That inspired me to try that. Right? I did 15 minutes just riffing on apartment complexes, right?
That seems like it would be more comfortable to get to that level, right? Where it's an idea, it's a concept, and you can just roll with it. But you're not going to get that unless you're on the mic.
Unless you do it. Unless you go riff it, man. Yeah. You got to go do it. I mean, there's guys, man, that have been doing the same 5 minutes for a decade.
Really?
They come to open mics and they enjoy the group and the people that they're with, and they hang out and they do that same 5 minutes that we saw them at the other open mic on Wednesday that they're doing there on Thursday, they're going to do on Friday at the other one, and they just keep doing that same 5 minutes, over and over, because that's where they find happiness, right? Whatever it is they do, And there's some killers out there. Like there's a local guy that I'm telling you he'll blow up one day. One of the funniest guys I've ever heard. His name is Christophe Jean. One of the best writers I've ever heard. He's writing, and then he'll get up and just, oh my God, he's a killer. But everybody has their own approach to doing it,
Such a cool art form too, man, And I don't know if it gets that credit as much as it should of it actually being an art, but sometimes it seems like the comedians are the ones that are speaking the truth about things too, at least in today's day and age a little bit, But
yeah, I think Chappelle said it a while ago, right? It's like the time frame that we're in now, it's up to the comedians to push harder. Yeah. He said something like that, to push harder, cross those lines, push those boundaries, to stop us from going over the edge of where we're headed, to pull it back in. Right. I've always appreciated comedy. I mean, I've always been a comedy fan, and I've never appreciated it as an art form more than I do now. Because when I watch it, like one of my favorite comedians, Bill Burr, when I watch him do what he does, oh my God. I mean, we had the last show out here was a guy named Comedian A-Train, he's from Atlanta, Jacksonville area, and he's been doing it a long time, and he's a clean comic, but he's clean that you don't even know he's clean. He had to tell you at the end, that he's proud of doing clean. But I watch a guy like that, or Bill. I mean, those are two different brackets. But when you watch those veterans do that, or Alex, when I watch those veterans do that, I just go, I am terrible at this art form. Like, oh my God, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Then it makes you go work harder, write harder. But I appreciate it so much as an art form. It's the hardest thing I've ever tried in my life, man. It's terrifying.
I think I need stuff like that in my life, though.
You're that guy, man.
Yeah.
You're that guy.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I'm doing this whole podcast thing, man, and the fishing and everything. It's just because I'm trying to find, and we talked about this last time where you said you don't like to, I think you said it was dangerous for people to like categorize who they are or something along that nature. Does that ring a bell? Where it's like,
of course.
Like we don't want to pin ourselves in a box because who you are now is not who you're going to be and who you were and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But for me, it's been more of trying to figure out who I'm not by doing different things. And I think that's like more valuable, than figuring out who you are. Let's find out who you're not, and it's kind of a search in that way. Does that make sense a little bit?
No, I like that. Finding out who you're not, for sure. Process of elimination. And I think sometimes, though, you got to maybe be careful even doing that, because one day, 10 years from now, you may be that guy you think you're not, or you need to be that guy you thought you're not, right? And then I bring up, I just did a podcast, the Cognitive Rampage, and finally a new podcast. I hadn't done one since I put our interview up. And the whole premise of it was to look at a belief, right, a good belief, or we'll call it something good that's worked for you, that's got you, say, to this level. It's raised you up a level, right? Let's say, I mean, for an easy example, that you were in a shit part of life, right? And you challenged a lot of the beliefs and things that were holding you back, put in some work, developed some new beliefs, and it brought you up a level, right? It pulled you out of the darkness, per se, right? And then you hold on to these beliefs because they served you well, right? And why would I let go of these beliefs that have served me well, that brought me out of this dark place? But do we begin to plateau, right, and get comfortable, right? I think I even brought up our interview on that podcast. I did, where we talked about the wordplay, right? Is it peace, or is it contentment, or is it plateau, right? Is it comfortable, right? What are the words, right? But we reach this plateau, whatever you want to call it, a safe place, right? But what happens if we then question those beliefs that have served us well? Question those beliefs, then what's the next level we go to? Are we willing to get out of this safe place that we're in by questioning beliefs that brought us from it? And it doesn't have to be a dark place, right? Maybe it brought us to a state of change, like you question beliefs from the corporate job you had, right? Yeah. That broke you out of that took you to the level that you're at now, right? Yeah. What if one day maybe you question even those beliefs that got you there? What's the next evolution from that? And I think people are afraid to question those beliefs because, dude, Adam, I used to be down here, right? And I love my life.
They helped me so much.
Right. Yeah. They helped me so much. How dare I question those? Yeah. And I'm thinking, what's the fun in that, right? Yeah. Why not question those? What's the next evolution beyond that?
For me, it kind of keeps coming back to these things I'm questioning. No one really has the answers, right? So the idea of continuing to question, even if it is your own beliefs, that kind of makes sense to me because I've been there, done that, right? I can change one belief. Maybe I can change another one in the future. But I'm learning more and more the more I'm trying to have conversations with people and, research my own stuff now, that nobody really has all the answers that maybe I thought were already out there, if that makes sense to a degree. But, and I'll try to think of an example. I'm at a birthday party over the weekend. And I come walking into the room. It was a 2-year-old's birthday party, right? And all the adults were around, and they were having a conversation about aliens. And I'm like, how in a 2-year-old's birthday party is there a whole group of adults in the corner having a conversation about aliens? But I'm going to get into it because right now that's a big topic of discussion because you got David Fravor. You're familiar with him. He's the commander that saw the Tic Tac move. Yep. Once I heard that guy, I'm like, what's his incentive to release this information?
And the government's even putting it out there, right?
Yeah. The government put it in the bill for like some COVID-19 thing, and they tried to sneak it in there. I'm like, wait a second. So that brings up the point of questioning beliefs that you've had. You should be, in my head, I should be questioning everything right now. That's kind of where I'm at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we talked about in the last podcast too, is that you can also find yourself in maybe a personal evolutionary hole that you never come out of, where peace isn't even on the forefront, right? Or contentment's not even on the forefront, right? We're in this constant state of evolution, right? If we're constantly evolving and we're diving into 30 books a week, right? And I think I made a post about it a long time ago on my Instagram. I put up the picture of the Russian from Rocky IV, Drago, right? And he's got all the machines and beeps on him, right? And like if you followed every single biohacking, personal evolution, personal growth status, these 3 things in the morning, eat this, don't do that, right? You would be fucking exhausted. Like you wouldn't even know what the fuck is going on, right? And what's that point of diminished return of trying to stick to all these, growth prospects, right? To where you're really your cortisol levels are spiked, you're stressed all the fucking time, right? It doesn't really even matter, right? But hey, you're eating the right things. This is in your coffee. This is what you do at 10 o'clock
all the time.
Yeah. You're like, well, where's your quality of life, right? Compared to that, right? Dr. Rhonda Patrick, I think, put out. I'll probably butcher this shit. She did a study. She had a guy on, I can't remember his name, but anyway, they were looking at lifespan over time, right? She's into basically life extension.
Right.
And they were looking at all these different things that you do for life extension or health per se, right? All the growth hacking you can imagine, right? And I think if my head serves me right, you're looking at about 3% extension if you're doing all of this amazing stuff, right? If you're working out, exercise, doing all that, you're like at 3%. So you died 73, not 70, right? And how much of your life did you live in the gym, right? How much of your life did you live doing that, right? What else could you have been doing, right? And really the end of that, the guy was really explaining that really the best things to do for life extension, because eventually what they're saying is genetics just catches up and that's your ass, right? The best thing you could do is not have things in your life that are destructive, say, smoking cigarettes or, eating fast food every day, right? Drinking, right? Is to eliminate those things for a better chance of life extension as opposed to, say maybe you drink hard on the weekends, but you're like Mr. Health during the week and you're shredded, you're ripped, you eat good, you work out, 10 hours a week, right? You do all this other stuff that's not necessarily going to add much to your life.
Right.
And I've often questioned that. I've often questioned what is that line of the point of diminished return when we're so focused on any type of growth. Doesn't even have to be life extension. If we're focused on personal development so much that we don't live in the present of what we have or what we are at the moment.
Yeah, you warned me about, and I take this from our last conversation, too much introspection that can lead to your own driving yourself crazy, whether it's anxiety or whatever the case may be. You spend too much time diving into yourself and what you're trying to change. But you mentioned something there that stuck with me, which is everything that I'm trying to accomplish is just more time to do what it is that I want to do.
That stuck with me when you said that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Money, spent too many years chasing that, right? And lost more things than I can even ever try to buy back, when it comes to my family and time with my kids and even time with just my extended family, right? But now that time is used for what I actually want to do. And that has brought me so much peace, man, that I can't even describe it in words in some cases what that's actually brought for me. Just being able to live your life the way you want to, versus chasing one thing or the other. But that's what introspection brought me to. But I'm like you, I often wonder, like, okay, well, where is that ceiling? What is it? Where should I be stopping? Is it health? Is it, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, do we go live off the grid, right? Do we get off and buy land and
I
disappear?
got chickens and ducks in my house now since I talked to you last, just in case, man. But I think COVID taught, at least from my perspective, it's like, man, these systems and things that people trust, like maybe you should have a plan B. Like unlikely that something's going to happen, but if you can't go to Publix or you can't go to get even fast food, right? Is there some sort of plan that you have in place? And that's kind of where I'm at, man. Think of little things like that, and all the fishing makes me, I can catch fish anywhere now.
That's right. Yeah. That's kind of.
I have something to eat,
Yeah, there's a family house we have out in the lake in Ocala. My cousin Jesse's family's got that house. It's on a well. Nice. So we had plotted our family's like, all right, we'll meet at the lake house. Yeah. We know we can hunt out there.
Bring your guns.
Right. There's enough out there between what we bring when we all meet out there. We're on well water, right? We know we can filter that for what we need to. There's on the lake, so we can fish at the lake. We can hunt out there. It's the middle of the Ocala National Forest. Nice. It was funny how, like, my brother's a lot like that. I'm like that, right? Jesse's like that. So all of us are kind of like, all right, what's the rendezvous point? What's the breakout day? When do we meet up? All right. Everyone's like, our plan's in place. And it's like, now let's go back and hope nothing happens. You know what I mean? Let's hope nothing happens.
That's funny, man. My family has the same plan because my brother and my sister, we've talked about this before, usually when we're all hanging out together, where it's like, okay, if this goes down, we send this text message to each other, get all your guns, and then meet at mom and dad's because that's where all the property and the lake and the well is. It's funny, man. It's the same conversation.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did get really nervous, man. I have never met in my life more people suffering from anxiety right now than I ever have in my life, or I've met more people dealing with anxiety now than I ever really imagined existed, than what statistics would even tell you. I often have come across people, and I'd say it's at least maybe 50%, 1 and 2 new people that I meet. If we're hanging out, we get a little deeper, they're kind of quick to be like, yeah, man, I have anxiety. I go through panic attacks or something like that. It is quite rampant.
Why? Why do you think? Is it the unknown of everything right now a little bit, or
maybe the unknown of everything? I think a lot of people may not, I think it was traumatizing to a lot of people too.
Sure.
People lost a lot of things, were worried they'd lose a lot of things. It was out of control. It really didn't, the way it was pitched to everybody, right, is you have no control of this, right? It's in the air, right? You could just show up. You can't run from it. It's going to kill everybody. One third of us are going to die. And for a lot of people, that's shock, right? I think social media has something to do with it too, probably. But it's quite a spike. I've often argued too that, I see mental health awareness months and shit like that. I think there's too much awareness. I think it's too much. It's like, if you Google symptoms, you have cancer 3 times, right? Like one of the jokes I mess with is I'm a hypochondriac. I've Googled, so many symptoms. I've died of cancer 3 times already, right? And I think that idea of mental health awareness, we all now are aware that it exists. And so it's almost like naturally Googling what anxiety is, what those experiences are. And now we know what it is. And so now maybe it manifests into what we're experiencing or what we should experience.
Kind of similar to what a placebo effect would do in the brain, right? I mean, you're thinking about it, whatever the case may be. But I think you're right. I think too many people, and that line stuck with me last time, just about anxiety in general. You said, I'm trying to remember it here, you were like, depression is known as being in the past and anxiety is known as being in the future or something like that. And even that simple explanation was something I'd never even considered before. And I've shared that with other people since you said that to me.
Cool,
but
man.
It's just something that I never really understood. But I agree. I think there's more people anxious about the future and what that might be now than maybe there has been in recent history. Yeah.
And I think there's so much awareness of it. I mean, and there's good to that too, right? That we're aware that maybe somebody that's suicidal, right? And we can help those people out. Sadly to say, I mean, I'll be the dick that says the shit. If somebody's going to do that, you're not going to know anyway. They're not going to tell you. That's why most people are like, he seemed fine. Right, that's what most people say.
To most people,
right? Everybody's like, "Oh my God, he was just we were hanging out. No one knew," and that's how it typically goes down. You don't know. So with all the awareness to say, "Well, we're helping stop suicides, etc." I don't think you are. I think you're making it more aware that this thing exists, scaring more people. They typically then manifest these symptoms into themselves, and maybe that's adding to it too.
But weren't you telling me that there's no real like a clinical way to diagnose it even too? So if you manifest this based off of what you read on Google, you walk in and tell your doctor, I'm experiencing this, and this, they're not going to do there's no brain scan that can show them that you have this or not. So what do? Just prescribe medication?
Most of the time. Yeah, most of the people, it's here's a couple Zoloft's or Xanaxes, depends on what you're taking.
And see what happens. It's like an experiment to see if it helps you, or
they'll tell you, here's a benzodiazepine, one of the toughest drugs to get off of ever.
Right? And I've heard that term.
One of the toughest drugs to get off of in your life. You have better chances with heroin.
Really?
In most cases.
Why? Like
right?
withdrawals or?
It's just a difficult drug to get off of, man. And one, it's the access to it, right? I mean, access to heroin's a little bit more difficult for most people, but a $20 copay and a refill, that's pretty damn easy. In Xanax bars, if they're giving out hard ones, I mean, and the thing is it can work, right? That's the thing, that if you're anxious and it does work for you, for some people it works. For some people, alcohol works, right? That's the thing. Alcohol works great for depression and anxiety until the next day, right? Or until it's back again. It
could be negative.
Right, then it's terrible, right? But at first, when you start drinking, you're like, this is shit. You're like, this is amazing, right? But it's the same with Xanaxes and stuff. They just pass those things out, man. And for some people, it's great. For some people, that's why I don't like the term drugs, right? Because some drugs help people. And I'd even speak to your mom on it, right? That the natural existing drugs, like a mushroom or psilocybin something or marijuana or cannabis, is, no, it's terrible for you, but God forbid you need a cholesterol medication or some statins to save your life. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can take those.
And she's in the medical field, right?
So she knows.
So I've had that same conversation with her. Like, if you look at the research behind what's been coming out over the last few years, and even if you go back and look at the reasons why some of these things are illegal in the first place, it gets you really questioning. Like,
then it gets you pissed.
You
just get mad.
The car company successfully fought seatbelts after they knew people were getting killed in car accidents.
Cost them money.
Cost them money. Bingo.
Yeah.
So there's, I got into that conversation with her, but
on the same token, there's some amazing drugs.
Yeah.
That save lives.
That really help people.
People need, that are amazing, and I had some resentment for that, or regret, I guess, I went at drug companies so hard in the beginning, that I think in the beginning I forgot to kind of say, hey, but thank you though for some of that shit you're making that's keeping people alive.
And you said this last time, whatever works for the individual. Yeah. If it's that prescription, if it's weed, if it's psilocybin, if it's walks on the beach, man, whatever works for the individual, then more power to you, But it seems like people like to take sides on things in some cases. Like they want to be against this and they want to be against that. Maybe it's back to the tribal whatever and
team
all of
choosing.
Us, right? Team choosing, but I kind of like the down the middle approach. You know, there's people that have this perspective, there's people that have that perspective. Let me kind of find mine in the middle. Does that make sense? A little down the middle.
You mean think for yourself?
Yeah.
God forbid we did that.
Yeah.
God forbid we did that. Yeah. But I think in fairness, right, to those that do it, I think it becomes an evolutionary hack for themselves, right? Our world that we live in is so fast and moves so quickly, right, that we have to compartmentalize beliefs that create schemas, right? So we have all kinds of schemas that are created from belief groupings that we have, right? So if you and I were going to talk sports, or if we were going to talk drugs, right, whatever we're going to talk, we pull that bucket off the shelf, right, and we go, all right, here's my belief schemas about that.
Right.
We don't have to think about it, right? Same with politics or whatever, right? So when people identify with a team, there's a tribal issue of belonging that wants to be there, but I think there's also, I don't want to call it a laziness of thinking, but almost an evolutionary necessity to stop someone from having to overthink so much, right, that they can just say, you know what, I identify as Republican, I identify as whatever, right, and because of that, I just need this bucket of this schema, and I don't have to think about it. And then
it's almost the easier way.
Survival. Yeah. I can survive in this world. Look, I got kids to feed. I got shit I got to do. I don't have time to think about it. And I can just go, all right, I don't want to think about it for myself. Yeah, I identify with that. That's cool. Yeah, I identify with that. This group does too. So does my neighbors, my coworkers, my boss, my parents, right? I'm in this group, so I get acceptance from that whole group at the same time. Or I also get the negative attention from that side by believing the opposite, right? Yeah. So, but I can just pull that belief schema down and go and dump that in and go, now here's all my thoughts on that, and I don't have to think about it for myself, right? And because we move so fast in this world, maybe it's an evolutionary, maybe it's our brain trying to keep up with as fast as we're moving. And so it's going like, hey, just identify with this, this is how I think, this is what I do, I am this person, I'm this person, I get acceptance from it too, and frankly, I don't have to think about it that fucking much.
Yeah.
Right?
Which makes it makes sense, right? It might be easier that way than to question everything, or in some cases seek out the other side, the other opposite. Okay, well, if this one person is saying this, well, what is that one person saying? Just the amount of time even to look that up in some cases. But it's scary how fast people disregard or try to change somebody else's opinion today as well.
Oh, God. And has it ever worked? Right? Has it ever worked?
No.
Have you ever changed your mind really because somebody got in an argument with you?
The only time I've ever changed my mind, this is truthful, is I told this to my wife, is when I see it for myself.
I knew it was going to, only the wives can do that.
Yeah. It's when I see something for myself. If you know, even if you say it to me and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's probably true. Like back of me won't believe it, but if I can see and witness and figure it out for myself, then it becomes truth for me.
Yeah, we're evidence gatherers, right? Yeah. So we gather evidence over time, but you have to be careful if you're gathering evidence to prove yourself to be right, then I'm looking for that evidence to prove myself to be right, rather than looking for the opposite evidence, right? Yeah. It depends on what you even Google, right? It's like, is this bad for you? What are the good side effects of this, right? And then depending on what you're Googling and how you're looking for it, I think I write about it in my book, right, is if you do Google symptoms, look to prove that you don't have it. Don't look to prove that you have it.
That you have it.
Right. And if you have a certain belief, don't look for things that substantiate or rationalize or justify your current belief. Look for evidence that doesn't support that to help you kind of, all right, damn. All right. Because you'll find what you're looking for.
Sure. And that's what the internet brings you. You know, usually you find what it is that you're actually, because it's smart enough to know what you're trying to find in some cases too.
Fucking you up, man.
Dude, it gets pretty scary.
Sometimes though, some things pop up. I'm like, I was just thinking that. I never searched any of that. And I'm like, this is scaring me. That
you got a Neuralink already?
Yeah.
What's up?
I'm like, why would you think I want to see that ad, to be honest?
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, hold on, man.
Yeah.
What have I been searching?
Yeah, I'm telling the ones I think, and you know, Snowden talks about it, but that microphone, man, I think they can pick up what you're saying. And again, I think it's just to be able to sell you stuff. I don't think they're really tracking or really care what it is I say. Yeah. But if I say I need new shoes, Nike might pay for that, so maybe they'll push that to Nike or whatever.
Oh yeah, oh that's definitely happening. Yeah, I mean things pop up. I had a party at my house and somebody, I forget the name of the vodka. I don't even drink vodka, nor have I ever had that brand. And that name got brought up in a conversation for about 5 minutes or so. The next day, YouTube, Facebook, I saw the ad for that very brand over and over, and I'm like, what the fuck, man? It's ridiculous, dude.
It's pretty ridiculous. And that was at the 2-year-old's birthday party. Another conversation that came up was AI, right? We went from aliens to AI, right? And there's like 7 of us having this big conversation about it. And, you know, I get it, but my question becomes, what is it that AI is going to realize, you know, where people are afraid that it's going to wipe out humans or whatever, like the Terminator scenario? What is it that they're going to realize that humans are doing? Is it because we're destroying the earth that we live, or like why? What's this switch that's going to flip where they want to destroy us all? You know, any thoughts on
that they're? Well, I mean, we're self-destructive in nature, right?
Yeah.
And I think if a machine can think for itself like that, then I think it would also want to eliminate its master. The only thing that could turn it off, right? So I would say it'd probably be more from that aspect rather than we're just self-destructive. It may
to protect itself,
right?
These things could destroy me.
If not so much that we're a virus to the world, because what's the machine give a fuck about Mother Earth, right? Yeah. It doesn't care if we're polluting it or whatever. It's a machine. It's going to live anyway.
Right.
I think it may more look at us as a virus that may infect them. They may say, hey, you could turn us off. This is the only threat that we have. Our maker is the only thing that could turn us off. So how do we neutralize this virus that could infect us or put a virus in us, right, or unplug us, right? That I can see it. I can see it happening. But I mean, AI in its most basic sense is really just it's thinking for you in a sense. I was a part of a company that we were working with some AI stuff. And I actually I got invited up with this company. I was on NASDAQ Trade Talks on TV up in Times Square. We were talking about blockchain week up there. It was all kind of crazy stuff.
Oh, cool.
And in this website we were building, it was a website where you buy and sell businesses. And what we were looking to use AI for was most people that buy and sell businesses are looking at the numbers, right? They're going, all right, I'm going to, and a lot of very wealthy people buy businesses, one to tax havens, save money, creates income, right? And they're buying it based on what the books look like.
Right.
And what we were trying to do was to bring more people into business ownership, not just buying based on, let's say, a market is doing at that current time, but is to buy a business that fits who you are. Right, something that you would enjoy doing, right, that keeps you in it,
versus something that just makes you money,
right? And your business longevity may be longer, right, in doing this. So what I was pitching up there, what we're using AI for, is we created this 15, 20 question questionnaire where people would answer it, and then it would try to match you to a business that would suit what those traits were before, and then you could take that and then go shopping for a business on our website. And hopefully match you to a better business, right? And that's what we're looking to use an AI to do and develop that. But so I mean, AI in its sense it's being used in YouTube, right? For those that don't understand, is when it gets that Netflix uses it. You know what I mean? Suggestions. This you might like this, right? You ever have somebody that you let use your Netflix account for a while? And then they start watching stuff, then you're getting suggestions like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I would never
fucking watch this. Right? But it's just reading that information, trying to predict, what it is.
I can tell when my kids have been on like my YouTube account versus theirs, because instead of fishing or podcast, it comes up like, some video, Among Us video game or whatever the kids are into, one of those things. So I get the fear. I do understand the fear, but I don't think you're going to stop it. To your point, almost every major company is utilizing some form of machine learning, right? So we are ultimately uploading all this information to it anyways, and I don't see that stopping. So it becomes one of those time things for me, which is, what am I going to do about it? Like, I don't really pay enough attention to be able to, like, I guess, think about it. But other than that, I got too much other stuff to do, you know?
And that's why I think we have to die. I'll make a left turn for you.
Yeah.
You know, I know a lot of it's always rich motherfuckers too that are looking for like immortality and life extension.
Longevity.
Right, you know? Right. You're like, they want to put their head into some bowl or something and live forever, right? Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think we could mentally survive if let's say you and I drop dead right now and they bring us back 300 years from now and put us in the world. It would be fucking overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like even if you took somebody from 200, 300 years ago even, and you put them in New York City in Times Square, they would lose their fucking minds, right? Yeah. They would just be like, they wouldn't know what to do, right? You just jam up, right? Yeah. And what does that do to you mentally, right? Yeah. And so as it gets older, that's why you see a kind of an older generation look at the newer generation going like, how many pronouns, right? They're like, well, this is fucking crazy, right? They look at it like it's nuts, right? But for that generation, it's just that generation, right? And but what's that look like 300 years from now? Could you and I even process what the fuck's even happening, right? Like, or we would just,
we couldn't have processed these 30 years ago.
No,
you know? Yeah, I'm with you.
And that's why we gotta go, man. That's why. What if we can't live anyway? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you want to be some immortal person and live forever, and then God knows what 3022 looks like. Yeah. You know what I mean?
If we even make it.
Yeah, good God, you know?
But you mentioned something to me, and, you know, the idea of getting older, and I'll tell you why I think this, but you mentioned that dementia or Alzheimer maybe not being a disease. I think you said, and I might be getting this wrong.
Oh no, I remember.
But questioning if that's an actual sickness or disease, or if it's just something that happens, you know, as we go. My grandfather's had it since he's probably pushing 20 years, man. He's like 93 now. It's probably closer to 15. But when it first started, I mean, he didn't remember anybody. He's still obviously it progresses, but not to know your kids anymore, not to know your grandkids anymore. But I heard him on the phone talking to his sister, who was like 96, you know, an older sister. And he was remembering like every detail of being a child. You know, so it was almost like this, his mind was in a place where he could remember what it was like being a child, but what he couldn't remember what it was like.
That was my argument. That was kind of the argument I was making, that we see it as a disease, right? Because they don't have access to what we have access to, right? So it's sort of similar, right, to where maybe the new world that came over and looked at the Native Americans and like savages, right? You know, and it was a savage world and a savage place, but they don't have this and they don't have that. Oh, they have no idea, right? And but maybe they were just fine, right? But they don't have what. So we look at it and say, well, they don't have what we have.
They don't have clothes. They don't have.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with
so
you.
we look at somebody that suffers from that, and we even use the word suffers from that, and goes and say, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. What? Because they don't remember like you do? Because they don't remember who you are? It's certainly terrible for those around them. Sure. You know, my mother's taken care of her mother for a long time like that, and it's torturing. Yeah. You know, to experience that and what that's like. It's suffering for those around the person. We're assuming it's suffering for the person that's in it because they don't do what we all think they should like to do. Right. And my thought was, it seems to be in a regression back to childhood. Yeah. Right? And almost sort of like it's removing all that treacherous shit that got in you about 4 years old, right? And then, I mean, because you look at a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and they don't give a fuck, right? They just spin around. They don't give a shit. They're like, woohoo, right? They look at their hand for 10 minutes, right? Everything's amazing, right? Unless you take it from them, right? You take the tablet and they lose their fucking mind, right? But everything is the shit. Everything is new and adventurous, right? And it's what's right in front of them. And so I just thought at an angle that we call it a disease. I'm sure that there's brain imaging, you know, damage to the brain is done, right? Diminishing things. I'm sure we can see things like that. I don't know, but I look at the individual and kind of go, if they're in a happy place. Yeah. You know what I mean? What if they're kind of like, they wake up the next morning like, hey.
It would be better than not having your body, right? His as a 90, I think he's 93 now, a 93-year-old man, his body, he's walking around, he's getting up and down, no problems. He's out in the yard working and things like that. So
randomly on the roof.
Sometimes, no. But if you had to pick one, I'd rather almost be where I lose my mind versus lose my body in some states, because to your point, he always seems pretty happy, man. You know, and back to when I heard him, this was a few years back, talking on the phone, man, he sounded really happy talking to his 96-year-old sister about specific details when they were children. So it's interesting that supports your idea, from a real world.
You think I was stoned thinking about that one, you know? Well, I worked in a dementia unit for a little bit of time.
Oh, okay.
And I watched. It was where they had living where you just lived regular. Then you moved to the middle building, which was assisted living, and then you would move to the unit, as they called it. And once you moved into the lockdown, dementia unit, and I would watch people progress from when I worked there, and they were living there. They were with their wife. Everything was fine, independent, to assisted, to in the unit, right? And I would watch people diminish like that. And every once in a while, though, in fairness, there would be, one or two out of the 40 or 50 patients we had there that would just scream no all day. Literally just
the word no over and
over again, or just pace around and cry, So I've seen a darker side of that too, right? And so that's the stuff that would make me kind of go, well, fuck, that's shitty. Yeah. What are they reliving, right? And to wake up every morning and not know who you are, where you are, what you're doing, or anything, right? Seems torturous and really unfair. In a lot of ways, where it's like, damn. Yeah. So it's me really trying to spin a brighter side or a hope to it. As I've done the same thing with schizophrenia. I worked with a lot of schizophrenic patients in the clinic. And I don't know, man. I walked out of there with the belief that I think they are on another level. Perhaps they see the dimension that maybe you and I only see on psilocybin. But they see it all the time.
Maybe they live in it.
Yeah, and they see it.
Interesting.
And there's this guy, John. Did I talk about him last time on the podcast? With John, man, this black guy, dreadlocks, been homeless, 30 years, and chose to be. He didn't. I tried to find him housing, and he'd be like, "No, man, I don't want the house, and man, I live in the woods now. That's what I'm gonna go back to."
That's what he wanted.
And that's where he stayed, and that's what he did. And he was definitely schizophrenic. Heard visual and audio hallucinations were definitely present. But every once in a while, man, I would sit and I'd talk to him at length, and he'd say some shit, man, and I'm like, no shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, really?
Truth.
Yeah, something that comes hard. And you're kind of like, no kidding. He's caught us all as he was looking around. He was very soft-spoken, too. He wasn't violent. A lot of misconceptions that schizophrenics are violent. Yeah. They're not. Pretty docile guy. And he would say that we were all walking around as paper cutouts. And we didn't see beyond in our own lives. And that being these two-dimensional people thinking we're living in a three-dimensional world. And would talk, and he goes, to me, you all look like paper cutouts. You're flat, all of you. And every one of us, right? And he lived in a different place where things had more depth to them than we could see, right? Than what he could see. And we call that crazy, right? We call that, insane or mentally ill, right? We call that. And it used to fucking bug me the more I got into it, where what makes an audio and visual hallucination is that the majority don't see it. So if we had 10 people in this room and you and I were seeing something floating around in the room, right, or hearing something in this room, but the other 8 didn't, you and I are having visual and audio hallucinations.
Are we seeing the same thing?
Say we are. We're still, you and I are the delusional ones. Right? We are mentally ill having audio and visual hallucinations. If 8 out of 10 saw it, now it's not a delusion or a hallucination. The majority has seen it.
It's there.
Right, it's there. But 2 still didn't, but 8 did. So if 8 out of the 10 did, doesn't classify because it's really there. Right? And so when I started thinking about schizophrenia as a diagnosis, and classification of that is typically audio and visual hallucination, sometimes just one, right? So because the majority of us don't see what John's seeing or hearing,
that means that means they have a problem.
Right? It's a delusion. Well, is it? Right? I mean, what if we put 300 million people next to John? Right? How many of those people see that too? Yeah. Right?
They've done that with psilocybin though, right? Where aren't there stories of trips or different dimension that you get to, but people have seen and talked about similar things from opposite sides of the country in some cases, right? Yeah. So maybe there is some other dimension.
I think that dimension exists. I just don't think we see it. I think it's. I mean, what I was talking to somebody the other day when I was going like look at this space right here. If I can make just a circle right here, there's nothing in this space, right?
Right.
But we know there is. There's particles and molecules and electrons, but all in this, and we just can't see that shit.
Right.
So what else is here that we don't see? Right. What else is here that we don't see? And just because our eye doesn't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Or we don't have the tech for it, right?
Yeah, or we don't. But you eat some mushrooms, bet you see it.
Yeah.
Right? Now you see it.
Yeah.
And now, it's the drugs interacting with you. It's just the drugs. Or is it opening your fucking eyes, right? Because you take other drugs if something else doesn't work. Right? If something else isn't working, you take a drug for it. No, it works now. Yeah. So what if on those drugs, it just works now? Yeah. And now you can see that side.
And those drugs that have been here for a really long time.
A very long time.
And are probably smarter than all of us think we are combined.
And on every continent.
And on every continent.
In some fashion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, man?
Yeah.
It's weird, man. But even then, you get down that spiral, right? And the end of it, it's still a subjective answer.
Sure.
You're not going to find the answer, right? Like a friend of mine right now, a very dear friend of mine, is experiencing some really bad depression. And he goes up and down through this. And he goes in and he calls it his dark place, right? And he goes through it, and I hate to see him there because he's a beautiful soul. And I hate to see him in that dark place, And I'm trying to get him out of categorizing as, hey, I'm back to that place again, right? Does this place exist, right? And I was going two different ways with it, but he was talking about, hey, maybe should I try some psilocybin, right? Should I try to experience it? And that's where I was going.
Had he never?
No, he has.
Okay.
We've eaten a couple times together, right? But yeah, where I was going was he kept asking, why am I like this? Why am I like this? Right? Why is it like this? And I'm like, dude, stop asking why are you like this? Because you're not going to get the answer. It'll be subjective anyway.
Right.
You're not going to come to a point to where you go, there it is, and then the light comes on, the curtain goes up, and you win, right? Asking why you're experiencing anxiety or why you're experiencing depression at the moment, a lot of times isn't a healthy thing to do because it spirals you down further because what's the answer? I don't know. Especially with anxiety too. Dr. Albert Ellis, who I think's, I don't know, one of the greatest ever. It's funny how I reference like psychologists and theorists like sports athletes. He's like one of the greatest to ever do it, That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. Like he's the GOAT, It's funny to me, but he was explaining anxiety, right? The last thing you want to do is when you're experiencing anxiety, is then to ask why you're experiencing anxiety, because when you're in the middle of experiencing anxiety, you have a distorted mind. And then to try to use a distorted mind to figure out why your mind is distorted now doubles down the anxiety. Now you're anxious that you have anxiety and you spiral yourself even further down, right? Rather than just to accept the fact of this is what it is, doesn't matter why. It doesn't last that long. The body can only stay at this, even if it's a full-on panic attack, the body can only stay at that level for 20 to 30 minutes and you're going to come out of it, right? And just accepting the fact that it is, and he uses a tool that if you are start to experience a panic attack or anxiety at the moment, is to literally be present by describing the present room. Like if I was in here, like those curtains are green, you have a beard, my sweater is blue.
And that helps.
Right, because the mind can only really focus on one thing at once. Multitasking is a fucking myth. Right, it can because you only do this one for a little bit, then this one for a little bit, then this one for a little bit.
Seems like more of a percentage. Like if I'm talking to you but thinking about something else, it takes away from me talking to you, right? So, and I don't know, it kind of seems like a percentage game as far as what you put your time.
But at that very moment, if I want to move this, I'm thinking about moving that, but I can carry enough, right? But if I'm trying to do both of those, or I'm gonna move this, talk to you. Am I multitasking, really, right? Or am I just getting by something, right? Am I really into it, right? Yeah. But that's what he talks about, doing that little trick, right, is to keep yourself in there, tricking the mind to stay in the present, because what your thoughts are why do I have this? Am I going to die? The future thoughts are happening, creating the anxiety. So if I take that mind and I continue to say, this room is beige, there's 7 lights in this room, those curtains are green, the table is brown, right? My legs are crossed, right? And you're refocusing that mind to be in the present. It's just a little tool to kind of help you wind out of that.
You're kind of describing my life, man. I've been building things that force me to stay in the current moment more, whether it's all the time with my kids, forces me to stay in that moment. Well, it's not forced. I choose to stay in that moment, right? Doing podcasts makes me stay in that moment. Fishing makes me stay in that moment, man. That's interesting because that's what I'm trying to accomplish in my own life is, and I wouldn't say I could comfortably say that I have ever felt what anxiety or depression feels like. I mean, not that I could say like this is 100% that's what it was or this is what I was feeling, right? But at least for me, it makes more sense to be focused on the present because I can't do anything about either of the two, right?
Yeah.
I can't change the past and learn from it, move on, right? But then I can't control really the future to an extent either. So it makes more sense to focus on what's right in front of you.
Yeah, and that's and it sounds good as a great task, but you know, as an accomplished person in your life, from relationship levels, right, from business levels, you're accomplished on many levels. Well, you are. If we simply walked around in the present, we'd have no plan for the future.
Right.
Like you'd have never made it here today.
Right.
Right? We wouldn't have spoke last week and planned today, right? You'd be like, I don't know, Adam, what are you doing today?
I thought we were supposed to be in the present.
Right. You can't just walk around all the time like, hey, all right.
But you mentioned tricking yourself back to it. So almost spending the majority of my time there, you know, instead of getting caught up in one or the other. You know, I think at least makes more sense for my ultimate happiness, which is another thing I'm trying to figure out is what does that even really mean to even, and that's a dark, you know, can be a deep subject as well. But I think it is focusing more on what's right in front of you because it's the only thing you're really guaranteed. You know, you talk about life being short and, you know, anything can happen, you know, and we're learning that more and more every day, man.
Oh, that's the truth. I mean, and happiness, again, is one of those terms, right? Or are we just going to walk around silly all the time? Like, what's the level that we're trying to be at all the time, right? You hear people like, I just want to be happy. I'm like, well, like all the fucking time? You know what I mean? Like, it's
kind of sounds like it would suck.
You know what I mean? Just all the time. You're just walking around like, hi, everybody. Hi, it's amazing.
I guess it's the majority of your time.
Right,
you know?
right.
I hate saying it like that because if you spend too much of your time doing anything, it seems to be, it's like too much of anything can be a bad thing. Too much happiness is a bad thing. Too much beer is a bad thing.
Including moderation, right? Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Exactly. That's why that's a phrase, right? Everything in moderation. Yeah. One thing I also wanted to ask you about that you brought up, you're accredited with athletic depression?
Athlete's depression.
Excuse me. We didn't talk about that last time. What is that and kind of how does, I don't know what that means to be accredited with that in that field.
Essentially the first one that points this out then writes an etiology of it, right?
Okay.
Not just saying, hey, I invented that, right? Is the idea of actually doing a complete write-up of what this is, right?
Okay.
So the hardest part I had with athlete's depression is what makes it different from your standard depression, right? What's the difference of it, right? And so writing and creating an etiology, how does this become, right? All etiology means, right, is the development of it, right? How does athlete's depression become athlete's depression, right? And a separation of that, where I found a difference between I don't want to say simple depression, but major depressive disorder, something like that, is where it begins, right? As how athlete's depression begins, and then when it really evolves and becomes what it is, right? So at a young age, if you're so-called a super athlete, right, you're starting at 6, 7 most of the time, right? And your entire life is centered around your sport or sports or whatever you're doing, right?
Your athletic ability, it's centered around that.
That's right, right. And then as you get older, all through school, high school, right? I'll just use football because that's me and it's easier, right? We define ourselves by that, right? Yeah, I play linebacker at this school, right? Yeah, I'm a football player. That defines our now social group. So our social groups, our connections, who we are, everything about us that gives us our rewards, that gives us our pain, our loss, social connections, everything that we experience comes from the sport itself or sports itself, right? We thus then define ourselves by the sport. We are this linebacker. We're not Adam Lowery, right? We are the linebacker. We are the volleyball player. This is who we are, right? It got us to college. It got us the girlfriend, right? It got us parents' attention, right? It got us all the things that we needed in life. And then when everything that you have is built around that period, not to mention, you're also coached along the way, so thinking for oneself is not really encouraged as an athlete. They tell you when to wake up. They tell you what to eat. They tell you what time to be there. They tell you to play, to run. They tell you every single thing you're supposed to do, right? If you want to go to college, do this, 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 and the other, right? Then the coach tells you, you want to play on this team, you do this, this, and this, right? So not only do we forget to think for ourselves, we're taught not to think for ourselves. We're taught to respond to instinct, or AKA emotion. So we're no longer thinking, we're responding to emotion. We are then defined by the entire sport itself. Then when the time comes when we are no longer that, it's not like it's a gradual end. For some people, it's a gradual end. Yeah. But for most people, it's just, well, you graduated. Yeah. It's over, right? You graduated college. It's over, right? You've aged out. Right? It's over. Whatever it is, it abruptly ends most of the time. And when sports abruptly end on somebody and they have defined themselves by every single aspect of their life by that, and then you just rip that away and remove it, this is why you get what I call athlete's depression. It is a different manifestation of depression. Let's say somebody that didn't play sports, didn't do any of that stuff, goes through life, has a decent life along the way, right? Let's say they get married, and 5 years later, the wife leaves them, right? Now what we have is an adjustment disorder, right? Something has happened to thus trigger that, right? And now I'm experiencing an adjustment disorder that may turn into depression, sadness, right? You could
because of the change of getting a divorce.
Right. The change has happened. This is experienced, right? You're not defined yourself by that in any certain way. And so now I may experience depression for a while, but I did not define myself by that marriage since I was 7. Right? I was not defined by that.
Only 5 years.
Right. But it's also why divorce can be difficult for people, right? When you define yourself as the husband, the father, the things, right? 20 years later, and then divorce happens, and people are on the edge of suicide, right? So the idea of bringing athletes' depression to the forefront is looking at, because my issue is I didn't want to say sports are bad, right? Because I'm going to get beat up for that. Sports give us a lot of good things in life, right? But to be aware, to begin to cultivate the athlete of knowing and letting them know this will end one day, right? I mean, there's a lot of guys in the NFL alumni that their main job to do is when new players come in the league, what to do with their money. Let them know your average lifespan of your career is 4 years here, right? And getting them ready for that and preparing for how short that's going to be, right? But the high school athlete doesn't get that, right? The college athlete doesn't get that, right? And then from 7, all of your brain development, you are this person. And when that's gone, let's face it, that a college athlete or a professional athlete even, or a high school athlete in the top of their game, their life coming up is different than the regular person. They have been raised in a hyper-vigilant environment. It's constantly hypervigilant, right? Well, it doesn't matter what sport you're in. I mean, if you're a tennis and you want to be a super tennis player, you're a golf, you want to be a super golf player, it is work, grind, do it again. That's terrible. You do it again, right? Beat yourself up, lost the tournament, right? Whatever it is, you're living in this constant state of hypervigilance, right? As opposed to went to school, came home, went to school, went home, right? And then Friday night, right? If you're in high school and you're playing Friday night, those rewards that you're getting, holy shit, right? That's another level, right? And then the rewards you get on Saturday, if in college, right? Or the rewards you get on Sunday, coming out to 30,000 cheering people, being interviewed, right? The money reward, the rewards are way the fuck up here, right? The losses and the negatives are extremes way down here. So you begin as a young athlete living in extremes. You live in extremes, period. And so now when I take that away, it's why you see a lot of ex-football players or athletes turn to fighting. Right? They're hunting the extreme. And how do I, because all of your cortisol levels, all of your levels are functioning on this high. The same for a military guy, right? Who's in combat, right? Who's coming home. You take that away from them. All the tools that this athlete has been given to survive in a hyper-vigilant, high reward, high risk, high loss environment. And your entire brain is functioning that way. Your entire body is functioning that way. You're a superior athlete, right? If you don't work out that day, you lose your shit, right? You're like, oh my God, I haven't worked out in a week, right? You're angry, right? There's things that have to, and then when all that goes away, but everything about you's been programmed, and then you got to step back into a 9-to-5 job. Lose your shit.
Yeah, man.
You may hit your wife, right? You're gonna. It's bad. It's wrong. And the basic treatment for depression is not sufficient for treating that kind of depression. It is just not. You can't take a super athlete who's fine-tuned to everything you put in their body, hand them an SSRI, an antidepressant, and hope it works. That shit can have some terrible side effects for this brain and this body, the way it's functioning. It's super sensitive to things you're putting in it, right? And then try to dose them down to calm them the fuck down and chill them out. I mean, you're fighting, I don't care if it's even just high school, right? You're fighting a serious issue.
Right.
And to just say, get a job, keep working out.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And that's why you see that. I mean, that's why you see athletes lose their fucking shit.
Yeah, man. And, not to bring it too down, but some of them end up killing people. A lot of these ex-athletes go down.
And themselves.
And themselves.
Junior Seau's one of those.
Bingo.
You know?
This one, my son is 8. He's one of those really good athletes, man. And I was similar, but I always had surfing. Where, I was really good at competitive sports and things like that, but I was always being pulled to the ocean, which, competition was cool, but surfing was always better for me, right? So I didn't kind of go down that football route. But he's super into football. This is why I'm worried about him, because, yes, you can have a high level of skill, right, and the amount of work that you're going to put in to need to be a professional. But your chances of being a professional athlete or even like a Division I athlete are so rare, right? These are the kind of conversations that him and I talk about when we talk about how hard it's going to be. But it made me think of you because I don't think that conversation happens enough. And is that the awareness that you need to help combat some of this at an early stage, to where if they know that they're let alone when they become a pro, what they do with their money at that point? I think that should probably start earlier to what you were saying there. But knowing that even your chances of getting to that level are very rare, I don't think comes out a lot in that coach superior athlete conversation.
No. I can hear the coach yelling at us now, is going, if you want to be that athlete, then you have to eat, sleep, and breathe and be that athlete, right? If you want to make it as that fighter, if you want to make it as that ball player, that's just what you do.
But then
right?
if you don't become that after doing what your coach told you, right, for years and years and years, then you can find yourself
lost,
not liking life.
Well, and what's going to give you what Friday and Saturday night gave you? What? That's why I've done so many crazy things in my life, man.
That
drug dealing and robbing dope boys was the only thing that matched what Friday and Saturdays gave me. It's the only fucking thing. I mean, not to mention I was raised in a pretty intensive, slightly abusive home.
From your father,
right? Football fit wonderfully. Wonderfully. But when football ended for me, I'm walking around with this hypervigilance of like, motherfucker, you know what I mean? Like, somebody fuck with me, please, right? Went into fighting for a little bit, trained for a little bit, but I went to that drug use, crazy parties. I went there because I felt at home. I was like, I know I've been up for 2 days on coke, man. I know I'm driving back with 10 keys, right? But that's where you feel at home, right? So what does that athlete do with what you've bred? You've bred and created this thing. And then just to be like, see ya. And you've defined yourself by this, right?
Yeah.
But what's the line between, do you make it if you don't define yourself by it, right? Do you make D1 if you don't say, this is what the fuck I am, who I am, what I do, I eat, sleep, and breathe it, right? And now I am that master at it, right? I mean, most of the people in fighting would tell you, if half of you or a quarter of you says, I'm not sure I want to do this, don't fucking do this, right?
It depends on what your ambition is. If you want to be the world champion and you have 25%, it's not going to happen. But if you want to get in shape, whatever the case may be. I've been talking to a lot of fighters, man, and it makes me think of athletes' depression as well. But
we've not even talked about CTE either.
Yeah, that was going to...
Not even bringing that in yet.
Yeah.
That's on top of whatever else is happening.
Right.
Because now you have a damaged brain that's trying to figure out what the fuck's wrong with its brain, and a person that the last thing an athlete's going to do is ask for help.
Right.
I don't need help.
Yeah.
I know what the fuck I'm doing.
I'm fine. I'm an athlete.
Although you've had a coach your entire fucking life. So you're way too prideful to say I need help.
Yeah.
2, now you don't even have a coach telling you. You don't even have a coach going, hey, you need to talk to somebody, man. Hey, you need to work this out, right? And I'll be honest, psychotherapy ain't gonna fucking help you. You're way too far. You're way too far. You tell a super athlete or tell a super veteran, some Navy SEAL guy, right? So tell them, how does that make you feel? And let them sit in front of you and tell how it makes you feel, right? They're going to be like, what the fuck? Give me some more alcohol.
But back to the awareness piece. So I was interviewing a couple veterans the other day, and both of them said that the military doesn't even prep them about PTSD before they come in. It's only in post. And I'm like, wait, it's only diagnosed later? No one's talking about prevented. And I don't even know if there are preventative ways, but at least awareness is back to the awareness piece. Is it something that... At least, and again, it was 2 people's.
They would probably tell you that if we did that, we would not be the superior soldiers that we are, and their life is in danger.
Wouldn't be able to handle.
They would tell you that you are putting yourself and every other soldier in danger if we weakened you that way, right? We have to train you to be
Fair
this,
point.
right?
Yeah.
Kind of like if there's a football player out there that is, thinking more about the business that they're starting and not the game on Sunday, do we lose? Right now it's affecting the whole team. You're a weakness, right? Right. And so what's that line, right? And that's where my conundrum hits me about this, right? One, I argue the fact that the last thing we need is more fucking diagnosis.
Sure.
The last thing we need is more diagnosis.
That's a good point to point out. Yeah.
So I'm hesitant to complete this book because I'm caught between somebody who argues way too many diagnoses, the fact that diagnoses are theoretical to begin with, and that because we can group a bunch of things into a column and call it something doesn't mean it's something, right?
But if it can bring awareness to individuals like yourself at an earlier state, could it help them not have to go through some of the things you went through? Yeah. But then it comes back to, would you be you if you didn't go through those things that you went through?
Yeah, and would you be the superior athlete, right? And I know there's athletes out there that are, if they hear this, go, that's fucking me, man. That's fucking me.
Yeah.
I've talked about that to other athletes, and they go, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
But if you can give somebody something, that's where diagnosis can be helpful, that you can give somebody something to say, hey, this is what's affecting you. Right, this is the good side of the diagnosis. Right, is that you can say, "Hey, this is what's affecting you," and they go, "All right, so I have athlete's depression now. Okay, what do I do from here?" Right. What do I do? It stops the why me's, and the what the fuck do I do? Right, and it's about how do you treat that? Right, how would you treat someone as a hypervigilant like that? Right, how do you substitute that? Right, I typically start by saying, it's probably a bad analogy, but. First, accepting the fact that what you experienced, let's say you're just a high school athlete, right? And there were some guys, on a side note, we did a research project through, I think it was DePaul University. This was years ago when I was just starting to write this book, and he was in the sports psychology department, and he did some research, and he did some surveys up there, and he passed out like 500 surveys, and he was asking, have you ever played sports or not? And if you said no, I think it was excluded. Then if you played sports up to high school, how long did you play or whatever? And I think I'm right when I say it was roughly 70% of those people that had checked off, they had been an athlete, whether they played 1 or 2 years in high school, played all the way through high school, or were current playing in college. 70% of them had experienced, and the key word was here, was a severe mental health disturbance. Not mild, not moderate, but a severe mental health disturbance, meaning a severe depressive episode or a severe anxiety episode, right? Psychotic break or addiction type, right? Severe. 70%, right? It went through that, and that's when I was like, holy shit. Now, imagine if you threw in, professional sports, right? I mean, how many
or
people
another
are there?
University,
right? Who fucking knows, right? And that's why I was like, it's more rampant than I think. That was the left field I was bringing in, but the diagnosis of saying, look, if this is what you have, we can begin to develop methods to treat that directly, right? Depression's been around long enough where the diagnosis helps, where we can say what we know has shown to help for that, right? Anxiety, this is what we know has shown to help for that. Not everybody, not all the time, right? But the idea of pointing something out there that, hey, this exists, this is a thing, I think you're right, can help people say, okay, that's what I'm experiencing. And then people smarter than me can start to develop, right, how do you treat this athlete, right? What are the steps to treat that athlete? Oh, that's where I was at, is the first acceptance of saying, let's say you just played high school football, Friday night. It's not about trying to get that back again. It's about boxing that, categorizing that, and saying that is what that was, but then trying to find something on a different level that feeds you differently, not trying to recreate that. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I tried to recreate the adrenaline, in a sense, from the chance taking that I was living, right? So I was like, hey, yeah, I'm going to try this. Yeah, I'm going to kick in a dope boy's house, right? I mean, I was trying to match that level of whatever the fuck that felt like, right? Instead of going, all right, this was intense, football was violent. How do I replace the intensity and the violence of what I had and what I was born to do into what I'm doing? It translated perfect, right? But it's until I started going, all right, I'm not going to get that back, right? Now you can go try fighting and other things to do it, right? But I'm not going to get that violent intensity back that I could live with, right? Because you want to talk about being in the moment. Being present on a football field when they say HUD is the most present you've ever been in your life, and it's nothing matters, right? And it's categorizing that and going, okay, what else can I do in my life that brings me this moment of escape? Podcasting. Okay. It's a different level, but I'm lost in the present.
Yeah.
It's a little scary when you first started.
Dude, it's scary. I get nervous even coming here to talk to you, man. Does that go away? I don't think so.
Comedy.
Yeah.
So what I start to do is I began to find avenues that were healthy and constructive that fed me that same mental holy shit.
That didn't give you the fear you might get shot by a drug dealer.
Or more CTE. Getting hit in the head.
Yeah. Which
Right.
fighting would give you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's taking those ideas, and this is a terrible curve, but when somebody asks me, well, then how do you treat athletes' depression? I go, with Transrational Structural Behavior Theory from the Cognitive Rampage. That's how you treat it. This is the treatment to athletes' depression, would be my response to it. At least start there. Take this and have all the great minds out there that are way smarter than me.
Right.
Break down TSBT and then their theories, their thoughts, their practices, their research. Go, what do we add to this?
Yeah.
Because that's what has worked for me and a lot of other athletes that I know that have played that into their lives. There's an inventory that you do. By the way, today's the anniversary of my book release.
Is it really?
I released it on 420.
Oh, congrats, man. I didn't even know. Hey,
I
cool.
released the book on 420, the second edition
How
of the book.
fitting, man. How
Right?
fitting for us to do this.
Well, still smoking then.
Yes,
I released the book on 420. There's an inventory in that book called the Ide Inventory. And a lot of people that don't know my book, but it is actual. You do my book. You don't just read it.
Right.
You live. There's fucking work in there. There's worksheets. There's life philosophy that you work out, that you literally write out, then you process through. It's crazy after you get done. It's about 20 sentences long, and you literally read your philosophy after you've applied what's called RSA, rational self-analysis, to those beliefs, right? And those beliefs cover everything. When you're done, you're never done with it, because it's always a work in progress, right? Well, always is irrational, because you die one day. Right? It's a work in progress, but you can look at those 20 sentences of your rough draft and you read it and you go, holy shit. Like, that's my philosophy. It's nobody else's. It's not some quote or some meme or some philosopher's. It's your shit, right? But then you take that philosophy and you work through what's called the Ide Inventory, and you build up its interest to enthusiasm inventory. I tell people happiness is not what you're after. It's enthusiasm. As happiness is a fleeting state of a moment, of a perception that we have considered to be happiness at the moment.
Enthusiasm that's going to keep you motivated to continue.
Enthusiasm is where you find happiness. So when you're enthusiastic about something, like I'm enthusiastic about, it's going to maintain the feeling of, quotes, happiness longer, as opposed to happiness. We can create that at any moment, at any state that we subjectively choose to. Sure. Right? By what we choose to believe, by what we choose to shape how we think, that creates the feeling, I'm happy. Right? It's a fleeting emotion that we create anyway. Enthusiasm is something that we experience, something we create literally by effort, by work, by process, right? Yeah. And so I love the Ide Inventory. It's fun to do. So you go through interests, and what you do is you write down these interests, right? And you want to move an interest to a competent or a competence that moves to something you're confident in, and something that you become ultimately enthusiastic about. So there's things that you write down in your life that, let's say, what's something you know nothing about?
Well,
but we're a little interested in.
Where I'm trying is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, actually. I've never done it once, but I know enough about it, and I've been talking to people, but we'll go there. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of them.
So you'd write that in the I column, right? Yeah. And this is if we're talking about your body. So there's 13 different categories that you use for interest. There's your mental, your physical. Oh. Did we lose you? Uh-oh. Mic check 1, 2. That's all right.
Minor interruption.
No worries.
So jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So you would write this interest inventory out. Like I was saying, there's 13 different categories or so. Where you're talking about your mental, your nutritional, your spiritual. For some, doesn't include it, right? Your social, or professional, right? So there's all kinds of categories. So we'll take, this would be into your body, right? Yeah. Your body, right? And or physical activity. So there's a couple different ones, right? Okay. So body breaks down in 3 different categories, right? And how you feed that. So let's say body, physical activity, interest is jiu-jitsu, right? So if it's just an interest, that means you have no competence about it whatsoever, right? You're certainly not confident in it, right? And you're not enthusiastic about it, right? More than likely a little
Trying
more.
to be.
But you're not there yet.
But not.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not there yet, right? Of course you're not. It's just an interest, right? So then how do we get competent in something?
Learn about it.
Right?
Yeah.
We learn about it. You research it. Maybe you listen to podcasts about it. You read about it a little bit.
I'll tell you what I'm doing. I've interviewed a second-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt twice. That's how I'm trying to get more confident about it.
So now you get some competence in it. All right. So how does competence move to confidence?
Probably by doing it.
Experience. Damn right.
Yeah.
So now we go get experience in it.
Yeah.
Now you may go get some experience in it. You may confidently learn it ain't for you.
Yeah.
And it stays in the confident ain't for you category.
Yeah.
Right. But let's say you go out there, you get some experience in it, you start doing it. Now you're a blue belt, now you're a purple belt, you got some confidence. By the time you're a blue belt, you're pretty enthusiastic about it. Right. Now you have something in your enthusiastic column, right? So you process this in life. What are you interested in? I'm interested in this. And then you go taste it, right? It could be a food. It could be anything, a diet. I mean, pick it.
Yeah.
And there's 1,000 things to be interested in, right?
Yeah.
So as I got this huge list of interests, now you also go down and go, well, what about the body are you interested in, but you have some competence in, but not much experience in?
That's a tough one. So about the body that I have some experience in, but I'm not confident in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could throw surfing in there. Like I have a lot of experience and I'm, confident in some situation, but there's a lot of situations where that confidence floods away because I haven't been there before.
Okay.
And that's
big wave surfing, for
exactly.
instance. Okay.
That's the prime example. Big wave surfing is where that confidence goes away. If you're on, 6-7 foot and under, that your confidence level's high. But if it's over that, it changes the game.
All right. So that would go in your competence column.
Okay.
So in order to get confident in that, what do you got to do?
Do it.
I got to fucking do it.
Yeah, I gotta
right?
do it.
And then you may move it to confidence that moves to enthusiasm. So think of all the things in 13 breakout categories that you're interested in, you write those down. That you're competent in, you write those down. That you're confident in, but not quite enthusiastic yet.
Yeah.
You know something about it.
Yeah.
You're pretty experienced in it.
Yeah.
But it hasn't quite given you that yet.
Yeah.
Right? Goes in the confident aisle.
Yep.
Now, how many things in the enthusiasm column can you write down and say, I'm interested in it, I'm competent in it, I'm confident because I've had a lot of experience with it, and it makes me enthusiastic. And then once you fill all this Ide inventory out, now you take this inventory, and you work it into a structure within your day or within your week, right? So when you're feeling a certain way, you go to your interest inventory, right? And you're saying, hey, I'm feeling a little low. I need to be challenged today. I go to my interest category, and I pick whether it's my mind, my body, wherever I'm working at, my social, whatever it's at, my family, and I go, all right, now I'm going to get some experience in this, so maybe I can move it to the competence column or the interest column. I'm going to work on that, right? Or maybe you're just feeling shitty and you need to feel enthusiastic and feel good, so you go right to your enthusiastic column and go, this works for me. And then what you do, the last chapter of the book is about structuring a life structure, hence Transrational Structural Behavior Theory, right? So now I structure a routine of my life using my inventory and my activities through the day that keep my mind, my body, spiritual if you want to, and beliefs focused. You take a super athlete and make them work this map. Not only is it coaching themselves, now they're finding all these interests about themselves, right? And you don't even have to be an athlete. You don't have to be severely depressed. That's why I say the book is about life optimization. It doesn't have to be about saving your life, right? It can just be change, right? And getting to know yourself and what that means. So the whole beginning of the book is the transitioning to a rational state of thinking, right?
Is that the hardest part, would you say?
If you can get by the first part of questioning your own shit, and going inside to say, what do I believe about the world, others, and self? Not bullshitting yourself in the beginning. But I give you too many keys to where even if you try to bullshit yourself, you're going to catch yourself. Good. Because I have words in there called determinate words, right? So as you're processing, rational self-analysis is really about taking a belief, right? What do you believe about eggplant? Now let's get deeper. What do you believe about the world in one sentence, one simple sentence?
It's short.
All right. Life is short?
Okay, life, yeah.
All right, what do you believe about yourself, others, or the world? Any one of those.
So let's go with the world, and we said it earlier, but I believe that there's no absolutes.
Okay, so I believe there's no absolutes, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we got to take out any words that have negative connotation, right? So no is a negative connotation, right? We cross that out. Now what's the sentence say?
Give it to me again.
All right.
I believe
there are absolutes.
There are absolutes.
All right, is this having a negative connotation to it, that there are absolutes? What's that ring for you?
I mean, there could be,
So why do you believe that the world has absolutes?
I don't think I do.
All right. Now we're working with a belief here that may be concrete, that possibly could be irrational.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you rewrite it.
Yeah, to say that there are, and we'll stick with the same one, to say that there are zero absolutes is obviously
Irrational as fuck.
Irrational as fuck. But
Which is why we took out the no.
Yeah.
So we took out the no.
Yeah.
The world has absolutes.
Yeah.
Now we're dealing with something more rational.
Right.
All right? But is it optimistic?
Yeah, to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's optimistic to you that there are absolutes in this world.
Yes.
Okay. So what we would do is how can we reframe this to sound more optimistic? But if it's optimistic, you'd keep it, right? You'd leave it there.
Right.
But remember, your initial belief was there are no absolutes.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So now we know that there are absolutes in this world for you that make you feel better, right? So how does that change your view on the world? That there are absolutes instead there are no absolutes. Right? And then you'd reframe that, rewrite that, right? Yeah. So what you start to look for determinate words, always, never, all the time. I list them all out in the book. Can't, must, that's masturbation, right?
Masturbate. I remember you said that last time.
Have to, must, right? Never, everyone, all the time.
Yeah.
These are all irrational words. Yeah. So if somebody writes down, I believe, if you were saying about others, right? We start with what's called the core beliefs. What do you believe about the world, others, and self?
Yeah.
Right. And if you write down in those beliefs, you use a determinate word, it's letting you know now you're starting with a irrational belief here. So we're cutting out determinate words, then rewrite it. Yeah. Then ask why to that. Rewrite that.
Like why that belief? Like where did that
why
come
do I
from?
believe that? I believe that because of this. Well, why do you believe that? And write that. And why to believe that? And write that out.
Yeah.
And you break that bad boy down and reframe it. Break it down and reframe it. Yeah. And what you end up getting when you do that with what you believe about other self in the world, those become your first 3 sentences to your life philosophy. That's how you start to answer questions or wondering out, right? So if you have a wonder in the world, right? What about this? What about that? Yeah. Don't overthink it. Go to your wisdom. You pull your philosophy out. And if your philosophy doesn't answer that, now what a great time to add something to your philosophy about this situation, right? But by the time you run through it with your whole philosophy, like I said, you have about 20 sentences that are kind of covering the gamut that you've applied RSA to, that you've written down and got as rational and as optimistic as you can.
Right.
That gives you this 20-sentence philosophy. That's getting through the beginning, right? That's beginning to, learn what rational thinking really is.
Right.
Learning to respond to thoughts, not emotions, but also learn that your thoughts are just schemas that are coming from what you believe, that your beliefs are just from what you experienced, which are all fucking subjective. Right. That your entire life's narrative is a goddamn perception.
Yeah.
Period.
Because of where you are,
But you believe it because you lived it, right? But can people let go of...
So that's the ultimate question is, can you let that go? That what you actually are is kind of randomness.
What you've created.
By chance. And what you've created and what you continue to create.
Which means you can create any fucking thing you want to.
Which is what's great about being born in America, right? Is you can create anything that's, in some cases, do what it is that you want to, right? Yeah. But some people, it's harder, So I feel for, that's, speaking about the world, is I feel for individuals that are born where that might not be what their perception of the world is, But then their perception could be better than mine because it's subjective, like you said, right?
And if it feeds them, right?
Well, what's interesting is the stuff you're saying is, a lot about what I'm trying to accomplish, right? It makes perfect sense to me about, I think that you have to have some understanding of yourself, and most people don't want to go through what that process looks like.
Yes, it means questioning the narrative.
And you give that's a really useful tool of being able to put a theory to your own life or whatever you think about your own life or what you want to accomplish. And most people wouldn't even go through that effort, or a lot of people wouldn't go through that effort.
Yeah.
But what that is could cure you from what it is that ails you.
Yeah.
Depression, anxiety, overweight, whatever the case.
Whatever you've allowed to define yourself to be. When people say that change is a process, I question that shit. So what's the moment, right? That if we change is a process, Adam, they tell me it takes time. Okay, Adam, I'm working on it.
Time heals all things.
I was an asshole therapist, right? I kicked in your front door. I was like, is change really a process? Because here's what's really happening in the fucking process. Yeah. You have a belief. You're trying to gather evidence over time to make you change your mind. That's all you're doing. But let's take this belief that you have that's keeping you here. If you realize that belief is just your subjective perception gathered over time from your subjective experiences, And all you're waiting to do is hopefully gather evidence to allow yourself, by the way, to change your mind, which is fucking retarded. Maybe we can say that. Yeah. Which allows yourself to change your mind. Wait, so hold on. You're gathering evidence to allow yourself to change your own fucking mind? Even though the beginning belief of it is simply your creation to begin with? And then when change happens, it's when you actually go, oh, yeah. And that very second when you go, oh, I was wrong. I did gather enough evidence.
That's hard enough in itself for people, though, to admit when they're wrong.
But think about it. If you realize that initial bullshit that you believe, I call it bullshit.
It's wrong in the first place.
It's perception, period.
Yeah.
So if you realize you created that perception through experience over time,
right.
But if you're aware that that's how it got there, why do I need the goddamn experience again to begin with to change my mind? I can just go, it doesn't work for me. It's not true. And change it. I don't need the evidence.
Yeah.
I gathered bullshit evidence to create my subjective perception of it to begin with. Why do I need to gather more subjective evidence over time to change my mind, to change this perception to begin with? It's fucking insane.
It's a kind of a loop.
It's fucking nuts. So I was like, just change your mind now.
Yeah.
If you're willing to understand that what you are living now, your narrative that you're living now, the beliefs that back that up are merely your perception of the experiences you had that make you believe it's AKA truth.
Right.
And you're just looking for another perceptive truth over time to say that change is a process.
And you can skip all that and just change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easier said than done.
Sure.
Easier.
Which is why the book goes on.
Right.
Because that's just the mental side. That's just the cognitive side. Right. In order to change that quick, why not attack it from the behavioral side too?
Right.
So then initiate behaviors. Now, when you're initiating behaviors through your structured routine, you're automatically creating new experiences to give you the evidence to back up the new belief.
Okay.
So just to say it, sure is to say it. I joke in my book, I'm like, well, today's going to be a bad day. No, reframe that. Today's going to be a good day. Bullshit. Until an hour later, you're like, I fucking knew it, right?
Yeah, I called it.
Right. You can reframe all you want to.
Right.
But until you go deeper into the beliefs and the belief extraction, not just the thought change, right? Thoughts are just symptoms of the beliefs, right? So I can change my thought, but I'm not really doing anything until I extract the beliefs and I see those irrational beliefs, but then I attack it from a behavioral side too. Now I bring new behaviors into my routine. Now I'm tackling these schemas from a belief or a behavior standpoint. Now I'm guess what I'm doing in inventory? I'm in new environments. I'm around different people. Now I'm in new environments. I'm attacking it from an environmental aspect. I'm attacking it from a behavioral aspect. And now you're attacking it from a cognitive aspect. Now you start to throw in the other parts of the book that I talk about, which is the nutrition, the sleep, the biology part of it, the neurology part of it. Now I'm attacking it from a biological level, on top of behavioral level, on top of an environmental level, on top of the cognitive practice. And I pull all that together. That's AKA living your cognitive rampage.
Yeah.
That's what that means. And pulling all of that in to make change like this, not a process of change.
Yes. Make change faster, huh?
Yeah. Because we all want it now, motherfucker. I ain't waiting.
Yeah.
Right.
But, man, this is why I like talking to you. I like your outlook. I like how you've taken your own experiences and put it into a convenient package. And maybe it wasn't to help others, but can help others, but definitely helped you.
Damn right.
Helped you.
And mind you, this isn't my shit. Right. I would love to be the guy that I'm the smart dude that came up with this. I think it's John Campbell on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yeah.
And I say that in the book. So I think in the beginning part, chapter 1, it's like the human behind the rampage. I write how I worked on the whiteboard like John Nash from The Beautiful Mind. That movie with Russell Crowe? Yeah,
I haven't seen it, but I know the movie. Yeah,
so he's working on this new theory, right? Because they've told him there's nothing new, right? So he's tirelessly working out all the physics and things on this board. And like John Nash, I worked over and over trying to come up with something new, only to realize in the end that we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And so I took the greatest minds in those fields that I could find. The issue is when you become one of the greatest minds like Albert Ellis in a cognitive behavioral practitioner or a cognitive science, it's all cognitive. When you're a behavioral theorist or practitioner, it's all behavioral. When you're an environmental practitioner, it's all the environment. It's not what you think. It's not what you do. It's the environment. It's what you do. If you're a behavioralist, if you're a neurologist, right? If you're a geneticist, it's your genetics and biology. Nothing else matters. And I'm going, you're all fucking right. Every one of you.
It all matters.
Right.
Yeah.
So I brought in these guys and ladies, these guys and ladies, these guys and ladies, brought them all in. And went, here's all of their theories. Now, how could I filter all of what they're saying to do into something you can apply to yourself?
Yeah.
And that's really all I did, was gather that information and create a structure that you can apply it to yourself in some fashion, not just read it, literally do it, right, and apply it. That was probably why I lost my fucking mind, right? That's probably where I went nuts.
Yeah. I can imagine, man. I can imagine.
It's too much. Now I just do comedy for a living, and I quit.
Yeah, you just quit all that stuff.
I quit, man. I walked away.
Had to be exhausting, man. Just
Remember I told you in the last podcast, it cost me my marriage, man.
That's right.
I lost everything to get that book out. But I dove down into myself, I released some demons in myself. When I say released them, meaning they didn't go away, meaning all of a sudden they showed up, that I came out the other end of that a little out of it, man. A little like, what the fuck, man? Like I couldn't put shit back in a box. I wanted to put it back in a box, I couldn't undo some of that. And I think that's the hesitation for some people in the beginning of that book is releasing that, letting go of what defines us, the narrative or the stories or the idea that not to lose meaning in doing it. That's the hardest part, right? Because our narrative and our experiences give meaning to our lives.
Yeah. I can find myself that in some experiences, and fishing comes to mind with this, is where I find myself not even enjoying that actual moment that I'm in, just because I'm thinking about too many other things, right? And that's back to what we were talking about earlier, where that's what really helps me. Sometimes I just stop and I'm like, man, like, I'm lucky to just be out here on this boat in this water and like talking to these fish that come up here, whatever the case may be, right? So that's been, talking about my view of life is just, I don't know, man. I think today and what's in front of you is the most important, but I like the idea of I think you have to have a plan and a structure to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish someday, and that can change all along the way, right? And back to my kids, that's what I'm trying to teach them. And I like the structural side behind it because you don't have to go very far to see how well structure can work in certain circumstances. So that's why I like talking to you, man. You built such a cool life for yourself, and I know, like you said, it's been some ups and downs, such as life. But the ultimate's got to be up. I would hope that for where you sit today, is it ultimately proud of where you're at, or?
Yeah, I would say that. When you said up and down, right? I've been on this weird place to argue the fact that there is no up or down, that there is no bad choice or good choice at all. That I have learned more and gained more wisdom from my bad choices and my shit times in life. So how could I call that a bad choice or a bad time in my life if most of my wisdom, most of my learning has happened from shit choices and dark places? And I've learned more from that, because when I'm in a good place, I'm not learning a whole much. I'm just fucking enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe I learned something to get out of it, right?
Right.
But those places taught me. And so to say a good choice or a bad choice, is it? I had to fuck up,
It's subjective.
Yeah. And so I'm like, there are no bad choices, right? And just sound
the choice you made.
Yeah, and it sound all woo-woo, right? I hate to sound like say it, but, trust the universe will unfold as it should. If you make the next wrong choice, trust the universe will unfold as it should. If you make the next right choice, trust the universe will unfold as it should. It's going to unfold. Yeah. And there's not a wrong choice. There's not a right choice.
Yeah.
It's just what the fuck it is. And
it's an interesting way to look at it, man, because sometimes, you're right, sometimes people I'll be one of those people. I get too hard on myself for a choice or decision that I made, especially if it's one that I made where I already knew. It wasn't a learning experience. Like, I knew that wasn't the right choice or decision to make. And for me, that's just what I'm trying to avoid, I suppose. But I like that approach where...
Don't spend too much time avoiding them.
Yeah.
Live them.
Yeah.
Choose it.
Yeah.
Because you'll just be right back to where you were anyway.
Yeah.
Then you'll be like, oh, I knew that.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, oh, now I really know that.
Yeah.
Right? Now
This time
right,
I really know this.
Yeah. Right? I mean, I live, I try to live like that, kind of in the moment. And I think living that way has given me some of the craziest experiences on earth, man. Like things that when I talk to people, like, are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, am I fucking serious? Like, I can't believe that shit.
Happened?
It's insane. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's insane. But I don't know, man. I like where it's at. I have comedy is such a passion in my life now. Like it is that thing. It is that thing. I don't care. Nice. I'm not in the marketing company anymore.
Nice.
I'm just throwing comedy shows. I'm out. Yeah. And all I'm doing is that. Awesome. And that's in my mind. That's my passion, man. And I guess you could say if you're chasing something that you're passionate about, something you're enthusiastic about, then I'd say yeah, it's on the up, man.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
You just gotta put the time in and get it to where it's that level of confidence, or what's the next step? I mean, for comedy, does it ever get to that?
I'm trying to shoot my special.
Get to that box.
I'm trying to shoot my special in October.
Nice.
I headlined twice in the last 2 months or so.
Nice.
So I got an hour. I got it ready to go, wow. And there's so many more comics just locally, even Orlando, that are way funnier than me, that write way better than me, that have long material than me, and I probably shouldn't judge them in any sense, but I think they're hesitant. Like they want to either put out this perfect special or something, right? And I want mine to be good too. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want this to be like, I want to be on my 5th special. You know what I mean? I don't want to be like, I got to make this perfect one that comes out and destroys.
Got to put out one to get to 5, man.
Yeah, I want to throw away this shit I'm doing already. I want to kick it out there and then start over. I'm like, I don't have shit.
Yeah.
Like, I want to start there real quick. I don't want to fucking wait, right?
Yeah.
I want to film it and get it out there and give it away for free, and see what happens and keep pushing it, man.
Yeah. Is that the plan?
Yeah.
Give it out YouTube or?
Yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do. I'll shop it first.
You see. Yeah,
I'll shop it, but people are going to be like, who the fuck are you? They're going to be like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot, but I'll kick out a free one and start making another one. I want to do one every 2 years.
Nice.
That's the main thing I want to do.
Yeah.
I had to make that choice, man, when I was a comedy club owner and I lost the club in April. I was afraid to commit, dude. Like, Alex is the one that helped me commit. Alex, you helped me commit. And he smelt it before he knew it in me. He was like, why are you afraid to commit to being a comedian, man?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. And I was like, how the fuck do you know that, man? He's like, I can tell, man. You don't want to call yourself one. And I just made the Instagram page, the comedian Adam Lowry Instagram page, like a couple months ago. And I've really been doing comedy.
Is that the commitment once you get to
Instagram?
I
finally did it. I finally went, fine. I made a page, comedian Adam Lowry. I'm now that.
Nice.
I still throw shows and shit like that. But my main goal is to open up a new club. It was, but not anymore. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm a fucking comedian, not a club owner. Nice, and trying to make that change.
That's got to feel good having that.
It's terrifying. It's fucking terrifying.
But good that you have something to, that striving force, I suppose, but yeah. What about podcasting, man? Because you're close to 300 episodes there, aren't you?
It got me back to it. It's starting to come back again. I'm starting a new one with my 2 comedy best friends, Alex and Matt.
Oh, cool.
Alex and I like the name of it, but Matt doesn't. Matt's the pessimist, logical one.
Got it.
He's typically the smarter one, I'd say. But Alex,
depends on the situation.
Me and Alex want to call it lizards are weird. That's like
lizards are
weird. There's an inside joke about it that me and Alex had, but Matt went on the phone that day, so he's pissed, I think. But we're gonna call it lizards are weird. We'll see. But I want to start that podcast back again. I did a Cognitive Rampage, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Yeah. I've been sitting back down on a little bit more, going, all right, I may go home tonight and do one.
Okay.
I'm a little hyped tonight after talking to you.
A little hyped after this. Yeah.
I miss it, man. I miss it. But yeah, when did we talk last? December?
Probably 2 months. Well, I'm not sure. I don't even have my phone, man. I don't even carry my cell phone. I think it was back 2-3 months ago, somewhere along there. Yeah, because you were, guess, 5 or 6, and now this will be 11. So I've been doing 1 or 2 a week in some cases. So. Yeah. But that was a good convo too, man. That was like the first time we ever really talked. We didn't talk on the phone before that either. We texted.
We started violating the rules a little bit in the beginning.
That's right. We started violating the rules a little bit. Then we sat down and talked to each other for almost 3 fucking hours.
This one's been a minute too.
This one's been this one.
6. Well, we started at 4.
And we're pushing 2 hours.
Pushing 2?
Yeah, man, yeah.
Yeah, if I had more Miller Lite, I'd keep going, man.
Oh, man. Do you think there is a sweet spot in time? I haven't found that, man. No. I think like some of them I've done 30, some of them are fucking 3 hours, man.
Yeah,
it's just like however it rides.
Yeah.
But this has been fun, man. I learned a lot from you each time.
I love chatting with you, man.
Dude, this has been...
You have a stoicness about you.
Stoicness.
You have a stoicness about you.
Really?
Something I love that philosophy, but something I don't grasp well.
Huh.
I
No
love
one's
it.
ever said that to me, man.
You have a stoicism about you, man.
Oh, well, thank you.
I
Thank
feed
you.
off that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feed off simply our conversation, man. You know, this is, for me, back to that thing, it's that challenge. You know, can people still do this? You know, we talked about social media last time and this time, but it takes away from people doing this anymore in some cases. So that's part of my driving factor of it anyways, just trying to make sure I'm still good at looking somebody in the eye and getting to know them and having a fun conversation with them. You know?
Yeah, I didn't invite you to come on the Cognitive Rampage, but I put every episode that you're doing on it
There
anyway.
you go, man. So I'm getting on there, anyway.
Maybe what we'll do is I'll throw this episode on anyway. But when you're ready, I'll interview you, and then you come on the Rampage, and we'll walk down your life.
Dude, that would be awesome.
Yeah, let's set it up, man.
That'd be awesome, man.
I'm down.
Yeah, cool. Anything else anything else you want to get out there? We covered a lot, man.
Yeah,
we started with drugs again. I think we started with drugs last time.
Yeah, we started with drugs and we ended with
Mom.
like some change your life shit. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, drugs help
You
you.
see,
get
mushrooms
there.
help, Mom.
You see, help me change my life.
Although she's gonna watch it, she's gonna be like substance-induced hypomania. That's what she's gonna do.
Jeez,
Started out with substance-induced hypomania, ended with that.
Awesome, man. Well, this was awesome.
I love it, Doug.
Whenever you want to do that, we'll do that, and we'll keep doing this, man, too. Whatever.
Cool, brother.
Awesome, man.
Love it,
Appreciate
man.
it. Yeah.
Still want to see you on the stage.
Oh, dude, I'm coming.
I'm gonna hold you to it.
So, one more thing.
Yeah.
I'm finally doing my first jiu-jitsu class. you
Okay.
know? So, I'm doing one jiu-jitsu, one Muay Thai, and one wrestling because I want to get a good base of
You want to get the shit
everything,
kicked
right?
out of you is what you want to do.
I want to see if there's one that I can commit time to.
Yeah.
If there's not, then what's the point? Because
Yeah.
I think I want to try it. But comedy is that thing, man. I'll put a date on my calendar, and then no matter what, I'll be ready for it. That's the kind of guy I got to be. I got to have that
Deal,
content.
and it's on.
It's on record.
Deal. I'm holding you
There.
to it.
Can I film it?
Of course.
You film first time experience?
Of course. Why not? You want to record everything.
That's part of this then. It's a lot of first times are getting recorded, and I can always have that for whatever I want it for. All right, it's locked in. I'm
right,
there.
brother.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
Dude, that was sweet.
Hell yeah.